All right, hello everybody. What I'm going to try to do today is walk you through configuring Infoblox, the WAPI with vRealize automation. So not the cloud automation license, but just the regular NIOS license in Infoblox with the least permissions needed. So bear with me. This is the first time I've really tried to do a heavy recording like this, and I'm already on like my 10th time trying to record this. So some of the work I've already done, but I'm going to go back and show you what I've done so far in order to get you caught up to where I'm at, so then we can move forward. So a couple housekeeping items right off the bat. I'm going to assume you have vRealize automation installed and configured to the standpoint that you can at least deploy a VM. So you've got your fabric groups going, your reservations going, you've got enough going that you can deploy a VM. And then that you can get into Orchestrator, and that you've got an Infoblox appliance to test with. Infoblox does let you download a trial appliance. That's what I'm currently using in my lab. That's what I would recommend, definitely before you go putting anything into production. So get the Infoblox, have it deployed and already configured before we can do anything. So once all that's done, the first thing we're going to do, which I've already done, but log into Infoblox after you have an IP set on it. You can do a set space network to set your IP information. If you haven't done that already, you're going to do a set temp license. You want to make sure you choose 8, which is the vNIOS license. This is going to tell me I've already got one installed. But if you don't have it installed, it's going to go ahead and install it, and it's going to reboot the appliance. You can pause throughout here anytime if needed. Like I said, I'm trying to catch you guys up. So some of this in the beginning is going to go really quick because I don't have to wait. Once it comes back up, you're going to do another set temp license, and you're going to choose 2, which is DNS zone with grid. After you finish that, it's going to recycle the UI, and then after that's done, we should be done in the actual console here. So then I'm going to have you log into the actual Infoblox web GUI. This is going to pop up a wizard. So you're going to have to accept a license agreement, and then it's going to pop up a wizard. I went through that wizard and said configure as, you're not joining a grid, but configure as grid. And I really didn't change anything in there. I think the only thing I changed was the time zone and the actual DNS name of the appliance. And then after you do that, it's going to, again, want to recycle. I think it's going to kick you out, and you're going to have to log back in again. So after you get all that done, then if you go into grid DNS, you're going to want to go ahead and start this DNS service. By default, it's going to be turned off. So you just hit here and hit the little start icon. That'll start the actual DNS services. Then we're going to need to configure an HTTPS cert. So if you go back to grid members and click the main grid here, you can go to certificates, generate self-signed certificate. The only thing you need to make sure of is that this is the common name of the appliance. So whatever you are DNSing your appliance as, make sure that goes in here. Say OK. You should get a blue bar that says it's reset. Then you're going to need to come up here and make sure that the certificate shows the name and not infoblox.com, which is what the default one's going to be. So make sure this is set correctly. Then we're going to go to data management, IPAM, and you're going to set up a network. So you see I've already got a network set up here. You can just go here and say add IPv4 network, manual, next. Put in your network down here, and then check that you automatically want to create a reverse mapping zone. That'll create this, and then in DNS you'll see I've got the reverse. And then I went ahead and added these two. So you to add 2 authoritative zones, I did like ad.beyondunix.local is my AD here. and I just created another one called hosted dot, and you'll see why I did this in a minute. When we get to actually configuring stuff, this will come into play. So then, after we finish all of that, we're going to go into vRealize Orchestrator Control Center. So if you're here, you're going to launch the Control Center, and by default, this is not going to let you in. This is going to be not running. So what you're going to need to do is connect to your VRA appliance. Excuse me, I need to get some more Mountain Dew here. Give me one second. Okay, so you're going to connect to your appliance here. Log in as root. And you are going to run the following command. /etc/init.d/vco-configurator start. I'm not actually going to do this because I've already done that. Kind of pulled that away in case anyone wants to read it. Run this. That'll start the service, so then you can actually connect to the web page, which I was trying to do here. Log in with root. And there's a couple things that we need to do in here. So we're going to need to import the certificate. So if we go to certs, you'll see I've already imported it here. But you're going to literally just say import from URL, put in the URL of the appliance, and you'll say import. It's going to say import and go ahead and say import. I'm not going to do it again because I already just did it. You'll see here I was, oh, that one actually I think is in there by default. So once you do that, then you're going to need to go into plugins, and you're going to have to load the plugin, which you see I've already done. But you can just say browse, find the plugin, hit open, hit upload. It'll pull it in. After it pulls it in, you're going to want to restart the services for Orchestrator. So in your VRA, you're going to want to do a service VCO server restart. That's going to take a minute. And when that completes, then you're going to want to do a service VCO-configurator restart. After that completes, I'd recommend go getting a coffee or something. Wait 5 minutes. It takes some time for those services to come back up. I've already done all of this, but we're getting close to catching up where I'm at. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and get into Orchestrator. So I think we've finally caught up to where I'm at. So we're going to say the Orchestrator client. We're going to go ahead and launch this. And we're going to get connected. Open up Orchestrator. Oh, this is loading. I'm going to grab another sip of my pop here. All right. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to add an IaaS host if we have not already done that. So in library, vRealize automation, infrastructure administration, configuration, add an IaaS host. Start workflow. So my host is vmauto iaas.ad.beyondunix.local. We of course automatically want to install the SSL certificates, default connection settings, and SSO is fine. Submit. This should run here. Perfect. So it added it. Then we want to run the actual Infoblox setup. So under library, Infoblox, VRA, installation, setup wizard, start. So in here, we do not want to create a VRA host because we already have one. And let's see, make sure we choose the right thing here. I think we want to say you know what, let's just do default, and we're going to say next. Password, we don't want to create an IaaS host, that's why we just added one a second ago. So choose your host, say next. This is what's going to show up in VRA. I just leave this as Infoblox-default. We're going to install it into all tenants. And we're going to enable custom host naming. So all of this looks good. We're just going to hit submit. With any luck, this is going to go through and do a whole bunch of stuff. Should see a whole bunch of stuff flood the log here if it actually starts doing everything correctly. And it looks like everything's going through. Yep. So it's creating all of our property definitions. Okay, so that completed successfully. So now, in vRealize automation, we are going to create the endpoint now. So under infrastructure, endpoints, oh, I'm sorry. We want, yeah, I'm in the right spot, endpoints. So now we've got an IPAM Infoblox. This did not used to exist before. So I'm just going to call this Infoblox NIOS. Address is Infoblox dot. Now, actually, hold on one second. Okay, so this endpoint I created, I'm actually going to delete, and you'll see why. So if we go back to Infoblox, we're going to want to go to administration. Role. I think we want to set up a group. So let's call this VRA group. And we'll say save and close. Admins, we're going to create a new local. We'll call this vRealize. It's a super secret password of vRealize. We're going to say it's part of VRA group. Okay. So in here, yeah, we only want API access. Okay. And now that group, we should be able to properly set all of the permissions that we need. So if we go to the default zone, we need to give it read access here. So if we go to permissions, we're going to add the VRA group read only. Then we got to go give it permissions to everything we want here. So this zone, I want it to have permissions to be able to read and write to here. I get lost in here sometimes. And then the reverse lookup zone, we are going to add permissions for VRA group to read and write here. And then in IPAM, we of course need to give permissions to that group to read and write here. I think that's all the permissions we actually need. We'll see how that works later. But now that that's done and we have an account, we can go back here and set up the endpoint. So let's say NIOS. So there is one thing that I've noticed in here, and for whatever reason, you can put the username and the password in here, but I always have to go to properties and add infoblox.ipam. So first of all, we can set the API type to just WAPI, which is what it is by default. But then we also want to set endpoint1 dot hostname to well, actually I don't think we need to do the hostname. Let's do username vRealize and password vRealize. Now this isn't clear text, but this is the only way I've had luck with actually making this work, and if someone can explain this to me, you know, I would be grateful. But this should set the endpoint up and it should actually be usable. So let's see where we're at. We did everything in Orchestrator. We've installed the Infoblox plugin. We've created the endpoint. Now we need to add the extensible attributes into Infoblox to actually make this work. So if we go to administration, extensible attributes, and we should be able to now just add. Okay, so the first one is VMware NIC index, and it is an integer. There's a way to add multiples of these, and I can't remember. Oh well. The next one is VMware Resource ID. It's a string. The next one is VMware On-Demand Network. It's a string. The next one is VMware Network Profile ID. It's a string. The next one is VMware External Network Profile ID. The next one is VMware External Range ID. The next one is VMware Request ID. These are all strings. And the next one is VMware Blueprint Request ID. Okay. Now we need to reload the extensible attributes. So in VCO client, the inventory tab, Infoblox. Huh. We may need to get out of Orchestrator and get back in here. Excuse me. All right. See if this works. This is the problem with doing things live here. Nope. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause and try and troubleshoot this, and I'll be back. All right, so I'm back after a little bit of troubleshooting. I think I got this figured out. So when I left off, I was having problems in Orchestrator seeing the actual extensible attributes here. Hit F5 a couple times. That wasn't working. I restarted the Orchestrator service. Something in here fixed that. I don't know if it was the Orchestrator service restart or a couple of the other things I did, but I'm going to tell you what else I did in order to get this working. So in vRealize automation, under the endpoints, under NIOS, I did set a host name. I don't think that did it, but I put that in there as well. And then in Infoblox, I made some changes here. So under administrators, you can see exactly what permissions I got here. So I created a group called VRA group, and I created an admin called vRealize, which of course is really not an admin. But then under groups, if you edit this group, you'll see it's only got API access, and then the permissions. So on that account, in that group, these are the permissions I have. So if you want to screen cap this or stop or, take a whatever you need to take. The main ones I did not have was the default network view. I did not have read-only on. And there was another one I added in here. It might have been the default DNS view, but at any rate, I've got permissions to write to the one IPAM IP setup I made, read access to the default DNS zone, read access to the default IPAM network view, read access to the grid permissions member, and then the read-write to the different DNS zones. So all of that seems to have fixed the issue, and I think we are where we are at now is actually configuring so the endpoint's been set up. So now if we go into reservations, network profiles, we should now be able to add a new external network profile, point to our NIOS endpoint, and if we do a search, we should see the one and only range that I have in there. Now, important thing to note here, if you set this up into a production environment, you're going to see every single network that's available. You're only, of course, going to be able to modify the ones that you have read-write access on. So make sure you're only pulling in the networks that you actually have permissions to do something with. And actually, you want to name this, so like this is going to be the hosted network. So we're going to say OK. That's been saved. So then if we go to design, and we're going to edit my Windows Server blueprint here, we should now be able to pull an existing network out, point to does it not see our network profile yet? Hosted network. It's there. What am I missing here? Do I have to run data collection again? Shouldn't have to for just a network profile. So in reservations, default reservation I've got, we need to attach that network profile to the VLAN that I'm dumping these on. There we go. Now if we go back here, there we go. So pull in our hosted network, and we know what IP range. Oh, yeah, so this is the other important thing I wanted to mention. So in Infoblox, under IPAM, you need to make sure you have a domain name set here, or this will fail. So you want to make sure, of course, that the permissions, that you've got read-write permissions to that zone. So I'm just going to put that in there. So now that that's done, you need to hook this up. So we'll come in here and say network and new hosted network, static IP, and then you also need to pull in the property groups of Infoblox default. And if you go to the property groups for Infoblox, you want to make sure, so DNS view is default. We're going to create host record. I think the rest of this is okay by default. I can't exactly remember. Let's go ahead and try with that configuration to deploy a box here, and I'm going to pause and we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm just checking in here. So you'll see I'm on request number 7. I've had a couple failures. Most of them are just due to me. I had some improperly named items in vRealize automation. So in Infoblox, I'm sorry. So in here, some of these were not named properly. I had some capitalization issues. So I fixed that. Then I had to go back into Orchestrator and run an F5 on the Infoblox IPAM in order to get this to update. And now it looks like everything's deploying properly. So I will keep an eye on this, but it looks like we're deploying here. So of course it's not named properly. That's just a machine prefix issue, and I'll get into some more advanced configuration stuff later. This was to just get things going. So excuse me. I'm going to put this on pause again. I'll make sure the VM actually deploys and I get a correct IP, and then we can take a look at Infoblox and see what everything looks like. So I'll be back. Okay. So we're back. This still shows that it's in progress. You'll see this is the box that's deployed. You'll see I did grab an IP. Really, I should have blocked out the first address because that's the default gateway for the network. But if we go into Infoblox, if you go into data management, IPAM, you'll see for the one network, if we click on it, that first option here, you can see it filled it in. Host records there. So that box is there. Of course, it's not down bound to the domain, but it did pull an IP from Infoblox. Everything is working. You'll see there, so request succeeded. So everything looks like, from the base standpoint, it is working. It is very basic. Like I said, I plan to upload other iterations of videos later as we kind of work through this, to like do some custom host naming and do some customizations as far as which network you can choose and a whole bunch of things you can do through the forms on the fly. This is just kind of the very first introduction to get Infoblox talking to VRA. This is my first video, so if there's any comments, recommendations, anything like that, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, or make a comment on the video and I'll try and get back to you. And I'll hopefully get this better corrected, and things will start to flow better as I start to create more videos. So bear with me. Thanks, guys.